I want to go to another really good friend of this show. He's been a friend of this show and my previous iterations, the one and only Ted Rall. Ted Rall is a political cartoonist, syndicated columnist, host of TMI from 10 to 12 every day, Monday through Friday, with the one and only, the great Manila Chan. What's happening, Ted? How you doing this morning, man? You doing all right? Oh, I can't hear you, Ted. Your mic might be muted. Still can't hear you, Ted. I can see you. I just can't hear you. That happens sometimes. I'm not, but so Ted can definitely hear me. He is coming up. He would be there in a moment. I'm going to give him some time to work that out. Look, if you dig the content, you find yourself coming back to the show often, definitely give it a like, share it, subscribe to it, hit the hit the notification bell. Also, if you really find yourself digging this content, you can support this work through PayPal, Patreon, or for that matter, Super Chats. All chats will be read, provided they're not racist, sexist, or for that matter, bigoted. I also want to thank all of you that have decided to join the Thomas family and become members of this show. Welcome back, Ted.
Okay, do you hear me
there
now?
You are.
Okay,
you.
Great.
How you doing, man? You doing all right this morning?
Yeah, I'm ready to face the week. How about you?
Yeah, I guess I am. I mean, I don't have a choice one way or the other. Time just kind of drags me along, whether I want to stop the train or not. One of the things that is coming up is apparently TikTok ban. TikTok has said it would cease all operations starting January 19th if the Supreme Court goes through with the ban. And considering what happened to us, I feel some kind of way for TikTok on this. I mean, keep in mind, we have a First Amendment in this country. At the very least, we're supposed to. And they are using this argument about TikTok, saying that Chinese are apparently getting their hands off of our top secret information for those people doing cat videos, and that in and of itself is enough of a reason to stop it. Whereas the real reason has more to do with the fact that TikTok has been instrumental in giving, let's say, a context to what is happening in Israel with the war, meaning people are seeing for themselves all of these people being killed, shot, kids being shot or frozen to death. And many of these videos are coming out from Israeli soldiers themselves. Mm-hmm. And you don't take my word for it. This is Mitt Romney. And he's having a conversation with, what is the sociopath's name? Oh God, what is the sociopath's name? It'll come to me in a moment. But Secretary of State, Blinken. Mm-hmm. And listen to what he says, because this is the honest part, that effectively social media has become our commons. And because it's now our commons, much of the media information that we get is coming from social media.
Some wonder why there was such overwhelming support for us to shut down potentially TikTok or other entities of that nature. If you look at the postings on TikTok and the number of mentions of Palestinians relative to other social media sites, it's overwhelmingly so among TikTok broadcasts. So I'd note that's of real interest, and the president will get the chance to make action in that regard.
Republican Senator
Romney saying the quiet part out loud, that effectively, look, when we were looking at, there was a social media campaign against going basically against Israel. And it wasn't like a campaign per se. It was just that Israeli soldiers were showing stuff online, or you could see videos of people being killed, shot, kids, and everything else. And people, as Americans, you're going to feel some kind of way about it, regardless of your take on the war. And so his point is, there was a large number of Americans who could watch that, took issue with that. And because we are so bought and corrupt that AIPAC, or some of these other groups that are effectively pushing for Israeli rights over American best interests, these groups were dumping over $100 million into a political race on anybody who's going to be against this issue of Palestine and Israel. I'm sorry about the noise in the background. It's disturbing myself also. The quiet part out loud is that there was political pressure for them to do something about TikTok, or for that matter, Twitter, Well, Twitter is under the auspices of Donald Trump's best friend. So no, on that one. TikTok, however, is fair game. And they wanted the ability to be able to control what Americans see on these various social media platforms, especially on the issue of Gaza and Israel. And so a lot of the energy that they were getting from the political space came against TikTok because TikTok was willing to allow people to see what was taking place actually on the ground. And those people were coming away with a certain assessment of what was happening on the ground, that this is a genocide, and typically we're supposed to be against genocide. It's astonishing to me that they're about to ban the largest social media network in the world, in the US, because of what it's showing on the network, using this dodgy excuse of we don't want the Chinese to get the names of people putting out cat videos. Give me your take on this, Ted.
Well, yeah, I mean, whether it's because of the Palestinian thing, which I suspect is a big part of it, or not, it doesn't matter. I mean, the issue is in our system and in our culture, we are innocent until proven guilty. And forget about proof. There's no evidence that TikTok is guilty of anything that they say. And of course,
no.
You could even argue that even if they were guilty of what they said, I'm not sure it's really grounds for a ban. But, okay, well, so it's a foreign entity. I mean, the BBC is a foreign entity. Are they not allowed to operate in the United States? I mean, China's not an enemy. We're not at war with China. China doesn't want to be at war with us. They're not an enemy. Just because we're paranoid and skittish does not make someone or something or a country a threat to us.
Mm-hmm.
But what really gets me is if Congress or the intelligence community has any kind of evidence that TikTok has done anything nefarious or represents an actual threat to national security, or they have a smoking gun, they have a internal memo from inside TikTok that proves that they have nefarious plans, then let's see them, right? Otherwise, back off. You don't have. I mean, if they can do this, it's a slippery slope argument. But if they can, they're going to start with a foreign entity, an entity that older people, let's say over 40, don't really much use or care about, and it's more vulnerable. But if this goes, it's going to be other stuff next, right? It never ends. It really just history shows that.
I don't even know how this one goes, frankly. I mean, it's pretty astonishing. And the reason why I'm saying the Israel-Gaza thing is because this was stuff that these guys owned up to. I mean, Bernie Sanders even pointed out that, there would be people who would know full well it's a genocide, but they can't come out and say anything because they don't want to get taken out politically. And, what was it? Thomas Massey was pointing out that many of these Congress members, the majority, have an Israeli minder, almost like on YouTube. If you have 100,000 views on YouTube, you have your own a YouTube person who you can talk to about various issues, your own coordinator. It's effectively Israel have their coordinators associated with these politicians. If you're spending $100 million, think about how much political clout that buys you all across the United States in these races. And if you, after spending that much money, say, hey, this site is a problem because it's exposing too much of the people that we're killing. We didn't like, them showing that valiant portrayal of the Israeli soldier that shot a baby bravely. We don't like that. That bothers us. So we need you to actually take political action to get rid of this. All of them know that this is a breach of any notion of the First Amendment. They don't care. They don't care. It's astonishing. I give you another one. Going after, what is it called? It's that system. It's not even the system. It's the movement against Israel, boycott, divest, and sanction, BDS, where you have it in various states where they would try to outlaw people backing BDS, which again is flagrantly going after the First Amendment right of Americans. And yet they would do it at the behest of Israel, and they would do it in these various states. I guess my point is TikTok is a problem for them for various reasons, but definitely for that. And for the US, that's something that we want to have more control over either way. You look at it. And by the way, we were victims of it too. I mean, whether it was RT, whether it was Sputnik, whether it's TikTok, this is stuff that they've done in Europe also, where they are openly saying that they want to now go after Twitter or go after some of these American tech companies which is part of the reason why Zuckerberg right now is trying to lobby Trump to protect it from Europe and the rules that Europe is going along with in order to go after tech companies. I'm this is a bad this is a bad way for us to go as Americans if they allow this to go through. Do you think the court is going to allow this, by the way?
Well, in recent years, the tendency that the court is planning to rule on has become increasingly transparent during oral arguments. That didn't always used to be the case. Sometimes they would surprise you after asking some questions that seemed to indicate that they were leaning one way, and then the ruling would come down the other way. So if that's the case, the questioning definitely seems to indicate that the conservative majority is going to side with the government here, and they're going to prioritize national security over First Amendment rights.
Wow.
Justice Barrett has said previously, I don't think she brought it up in oral arguments, but she has said previously, she doesn't believe that foreign entities or foreign nationals have First Amendment rights in the United States. Now, that's extremely problematic, regardless of where you are ideologically, to have a justice on the U.S. Supreme Court who has such a fundamental misunderstanding of the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights, the Constitution, all constitutional rights, habeas corpus, etc., they all apply to, including the First Amendment, they apply to every living human being who happens to be walking around on U.S. territory, whether they're an undocumented worker, a migrant, a felon, a criminal, a foreigner, makes no difference. It's like, you have First Amendment rights if you're in the United States. 170 million people, most of whom are Americans, use TikTok, on a regular basis. So they have their First Amendment rights are being quashed here. This is government censorship. I mean,
Yes, it is.
they're playing it cute by saying, well, we're not forcing them to shut down. We're merely forcing a sale. Well, the thing is, okay, the problem with that theory is, like, even if you were forcing a sale, that's assuming there's a buyer, right? I mean,
Right.
You don't know that. I mean, maybe there's no buyer at all, or maybe there's no buyer who can run the company. I mean, another interesting phenomenon here, though, I mean, it gives me a little faith, is that the government is playing censorship whack-a-mole here. I mean, this content is going to come out, okay? It'll come, if you can close TikTok down, the free market will see an opportunity here in Silicon Valley to create something that will replace it. No way are the Peter Thiels of the world looking at this and saying, man, I don't want that 170 million users for myself. Someone's going to want them, right?
Yeah.
So something will replace it, and they're going to be right back at it again. And this time they're going to have to come up with an excuse that's more authoritarian and that's even less legal and less constitutional to block an American entity. They'll come up with something else. This is, I mean, there's a lot of concern, I think rightfully so, that Trump has authoritarian tendencies, but we're seeing the authoritarian tendencies coming from both major parties here. It was extremely disturbing to me that Democrats and Republicans voted overwhelmingly in favor of this TikTok legislation,
Yep.
and no one had anything to say about why.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. So true. 1,000% true. Like it's outrageous. And I guess I am bugged by this specifically because I feel like I got fired for some nonsense on the same level. Like this idea of, and then it's like, like Malik would say, too cute by half. Because what you're really doing is, we don't like what you're saying. And so we need to find a way for you to stop saying it. And we can't go with it directly because we have a First Amendment rights that prevents us, a tyrannical government, from doing exactly what tyrannical governments wants to do when they're dealing with something that is going against our own narrative of events. And so what we're going to do is not go after it directly. We're going to go at it in this kind of indirect means of, well, it's a foreign entity and we don't, this is about national security. That's what it is. It's national security. It's just outrageous.
It's cat videos, like you said.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny dances, right? I mean,
Yeah.
some of it's political, whatever. But let's just say, for the sake of, I mean, really, truly, their excuse is, it's really lame. It's like, oh, they're scooping up American user data to do what? I mean, what? I mean, I know that the Chinese, intelligence agencies have my address, my social security number, and so does Nigerian intelligence and French intelligence and English intelligence and Japanese intelligence. They all do.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm not that. Those horses have run out of the barn years ago. Privacy is no more. And what exactly are the Chinese going to do by knowing my social security number? Are they going to run up my credit cards? I mean, what are they going to do, really?
Yep.
I mean, are they coming to arrest me personally? Are they going to send a drone to my apartment and blow me up? I'm just waiting. I just want to know what the threat is here. And if there's a real threat, well, then honestly, then they should tell us what it is, so that we can protect ourselves also. And so we can make sure nothing like TikTok ever happens again. We deserve to know. We pay their salaries. We pay for these intelligence agencies. If they know something, they should tell us what it is. They don't know what I just don't believe them.
No, nor do I. And it's going to be super interesting, but 175 million people are not going to be able to access TikTok. And because of quote unquote national security reasons, that nonsense that they're giving for it. The other thing I want to hit is Los Angeles Fire Department. Now, I stayed off the story because I wasn't exactly sure what went wrong. Okay, because I wasn't sure what went wrong, I didn't necessarily want to pile on and hit the federal or hit the local government, if indeed it wasn't necessarily their fault. The fire is just astonishing. To look at the scale of that fire and to look at, so far we haven't had a huge number of deaths, but the fire has been horrible. So come to find out, this came out from Drop Site News. This is Ryan Grimm's thing. They have been doing really good work. So right here, the Los Angeles Fire Department knew it was severely underfunded long before this fire. Quote, "We don't have enough firefighters and medics. We don't have enough fire engines. We don't have enough trucks and ambulances in the field," unquote. Freddie Escobar, an LAFD captain, second, told the city during his testimony at a budget meeting on May 1st, 2024, quote, "And we don't have the equipment and the staffing that we need to respond to 500,000 emergency calls every year," unquote, Escobar said, who is the union president of the United Firefighters of Los Angeles City. And so the captain explained that they demanded for fire and rescue had doubled while resources dwindled. Quote, "The LAFD has fewer firefighters and medics today than we did 15 years ago, but our emergency calls for our services has increased by more than 50% during that same time." And this last part, it says emergency vehicles were out of commission in Los Angeles because they had not been allocated to hire sheet metal workers and mechanics to fix them. This includes 40 fire engines, quote, "which carry water and used to fight fires," unquote. 36 ambulances, 10 fire trucks, which carry equipment like ladders and rescue supplies. As Captain Chung Ho testified during the budget hearing, quote, "It just makes no sense to have millions of dollars of fire trucks and engines taken out of service and sideline because we don't have enough mechanics to keep them running." And right here, quote, "We're at a breaking point where our firefighters can no longer do more with less," testified Fire Chief Kristen Crowley in a budget hearing at City Hall concerning the 2024-2025 fiscal year. She made clear that the LAFD was struggling, quote, "The service delivery model is no longer sustainable," unquote. And this article goes further into the difficulties that the fire department was having. Effectively, they cut services and expected them to do more with less. And now we have this massive fire, and people are going to be pointing the finger who was responsible for this. Give me your take on this, because I want to go to Newsom after you give me your take, because what Newsom doing here is a bit of deflection into let's focus on the future, and that's not necessarily focus on now, but I'm not sure that's going to work. Give me your thoughts, Ted.
Well, I have a little bit of insight about LA. I've worked there as a radio talk show host at KFI Radio in LA.
Did you?
I was also the editorial cartoonist at the Los Angeles Times for years. And ultimately, I was let go, in a sort of corrupt deal where the LAPD pension fund bought the LA Times and demanded that I be fired and smeared because I had done cartoons critical of the LAPD. What I discovered in all of this, and I fought this all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. What I discovered in going after, in being part of LA politics, is there are some major systemic problems politically in Southern California. And first of all, the corruption goes from top to bottom. And basically, even though it's the second biggest city in the country, it's basically run like Tuscaloosa. It's like everybody knows everybody. Everybody's working for everyone. Everyone's dating everyone. Everyone's working with each other. They're all bribing each other. I mean, the corruption is rampant in that city. And one of the reasons they get away with it is because, unlike New York City, where, Mayor Adams, for example, is under constant attack by major media organizations because it's the capital of the nation's media is here in New York. In LA, there's only one major media outlet, really, and that's the LA Times. Now, there's no alt weekly to speak of. There's all the other organizations, like including public radio, they all get their news from the LA Times, and the LA Times is deeply intertwined. So no one's ever holding these people's feet to, I hate to use this pun right now, the fire, right?
Yeah.
So the point is that this is the kind of thing, there's really no accountability for politicians there. And, this story it rings very true. Would more equipment have been able to necessarily stop, 100-mile-an-hour winds with 100-foot-high flames with extremely dry conditions? Maybe not. But here's the thing. Firefighting, and that is true about New York too, is always a tempting budget cut for politicians, because for the most part, firefighters don't do anything. For the most part, they sit around and cook at the firehouse. And when you only need them 1% of the time, but when you need them, you really need them, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard for, you need cops every day. Firefighters, mostly they're not doing anything. And so that's like, politicians are like, why are we paying for this? They can do more with less, maybe there's better equipment, blah, blah, blah. The thing is, it's not surprising that something like this would happen. has some major, and all of California has never really recovered from Proposition 13, passed in the late 1970s, that gutted the tax flow system into state coffers, and limited property taxes, which is a major source of revenue for California municipalities. LA has, there's some major budgetary constraints there. The main tax base there is Hollywood and entertainment. It got gutted during the pandemic. They're still not back up to full throttle. I mean, if you don't believe me, go look at your local movie listings. Like, nothing's playing, right? Still, because there's not a lot of movies in the pipeline. They're not back up. So they're not getting taxes there. And so anyway, it's not that surprising. But this is only going to get worse, right? And I think this is not even just a question of you need more firefighters and you need more equipment. I think you have to maybe completely rethink your entire fire strategy, given the fact that the climate of Southern California, always dry, always wildfires, always an issue, is getting worse. It's getting hotter and drier, and they've got to do something. They've got to, this is a systemic issue. Maybe so many people shouldn't live there, and you have a breakdown of the insurance system. I mean, and I don't really blame home insurers for saying we can't make money here. They can't. I don't see how they can. How can you insure like a $4 million house, which, in Southern California, a $4 million house is a middle class house. How are you going to insure a $4 million house, when it's going to burn down every 3 years?
You read my mind. And that's what I was going to go to. Because apparently a lot of the insurance companies, people are complaining that their insurance was canceled like a few months before the fire actually hit. And this puts me to mind, kind of like in certain areas of Florida, where it's like, okay, a hurricane is going to hit this house. You know it. The moment that you build it, I know that you like overlooking the ocean, but
Sure.
This house is going to be toast the moment that the first hurricane comes.
It's a disposable house.
Yeah. And so the insurance company is like, I don't want to pay money for a house that I know is going to be destroyed.
They're not wrong. They're really not wrong. I mean, and it reminds me of, I used to live in Eastern Long Island in the Hamptons. The sign at every little town, Wainscott, East Hampton, whatever, it always says settled 1620, settled 1630. And I remember one time driving around and just seeing those signs, and I was like, there's nothing historic here, right? There's no old houses. And then it was like, hurricanes. Right? It's like that's why they've all blown into the sea, right? So it's like that's just, and that's Long Island, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
low lying, it's a sandbar. It's not even Florida. It's not going to get hit nearly as often, but it does get hit every 20, 30, 40 years by something pretty substantial. And so that's what this is going to be. They have a systemic issue. I mean, think about like a year ago when we were reading about the federal government, we covered this on our shows, right? The Colorado River Basin problem, where they were trying to apportion what's left of the Colorado River to all the various states. You know, they're trying, you know, California, which is gobbling up a gallon for every almond. Every single almond gets a gallon of water to grow it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we got to stick to walnuts and not have almonds. You know, I mean, it's like, I mean, it is kind of crazy. I mean, I've spent a lot of time driving around California, and I was always like, this doesn't feel like a hospitable place. Like my ex-wife was from California. She's like,
but it seems like
it's dry.
But certainly there.
It's scary. Like if you broke down, like if you're driving on Interstate 5 between San Francisco and Los Angeles, and your car broke down, you're kind of in trouble, right? Because it's like there's no water. There's no.
See, I don't have the context. I've only been to California like once to cover.
Yeah,
in fact, I was there to cover it a bit.
It's hot. There's rattlesnakes. It's like people aren't really supposed to live there in vast numbers, and they do.
I guess. Oh, yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah, I feel like this is a conversation with Florida also. In some respects, it's like, okay, are you sure you really want to put a house in that spot, and should we be on the hook for it if you do? Yeah,
I don't think the taxpayers should be. You know, and like I understand why people want to live in interesting, strange places, but I mean, come on, it's all intertwined here. Mark my words, right? These fires, you know what's coming next, right? They have major floods. Like a year ago, there were major floods and rains in Los Angeles, right? That never used to happen before. So what's going to happen? All the trees are gone. They all burned up. Well, it's going to rain. The mudslides are next, okay? And they're going to be worse than they ever would be because there's no roots holding the land together, holding the hills up. You see these houses up on half the houses on stilts. I mean, you know, this is like, it's not sustainable. Yeah. And I understand why people like it because the weather's nice, I guess. Not my kind of weather, but I know people like it. But it's like, so people like all sorts of things. You know, it's just not, it doesn't work. We have lots of room in the middle of the country that's a lot safer. I mean, you know, move to the Midwest.
Well, Ted Rall, tell people to get the hell out of Dodge if you want to keep your house safe. Yeah, I mean, like you said, I understand why people want to be looking over the ocean. But you can't ask an insurance company to pay for your house when the ocean swallows that house up that's looking over the ocean. Ted Rall, political cartoonist, syndicated columnist, co-host of TMI, Too Much Information with the one and only Manila Chan, that starts from 10 to 12, Monday through Friday. Definitely check him out. Ted, man, always appreciate you, man. Thank you. I appreciate this.
Bye, Jamal.
Thank you. Have a good one.